The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished crystal, its walls reflecting the light of distant stars through massive viewports. Representatives from 47 species sat in perfect geometric arrangements, their forms as varied as the worlds they called home. The Karathi delegation resembled walking trees with bark-like skin, while the Vex floated in containment suits filled with methane. The Thurian representatives towered above all others, their crystalline bodies refracting light into rainbow patterns. And then there was Captain Maya Stone, sitting alone at humanity's modest station, looking remarkably ordinary in her navy blue uniform. The war had raged for 18 months across 17 star systems. What began as a territorial dispute between the Karathi and the Vex had spiraled into something far worse when the Thurian claimed both species were trespassing on ancient sacred grounds. Soon, trade routes collapsed, colonies were abandoned, and 3 lesser species had been driven to near extinction as collateral damage. Maya had arrived on the diplomatic vessel Harmony just 6 hours ago, carrying Earth's first formal proposal for mediation. Humanity was new to the galactic stage, barely 2 decades since first contact, and most species viewed them as an oddity at best. The humans had no obvious advantages. They weren't the strongest, fastest, smartest, or most technologically advanced. They were, in the words of one Karathi diplomat, aggressively average. But average had gotten them invited to this emergency session, because none of the superior species had managed to find a solution. Council Speaker Thelen, a Thurian whose crystalline form pulsed with authority, activated the translation matrix. His voice resonated through every being's consciousness simultaneously. "The human delegation has requested to address the assembly," Thelen announced. "Though their species lacks the wisdom of eons or the strength of titans, they claim to offer perspective on our difficulties." Maya stood, feeling the weight of 47 gazes upon her. Some were curious, others dismissive, but most seemed to look through her entirely. She approached the central speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the translation system. "I've studied your conflict for months. I've read every treaty, every territorial claim, every historical document you've shared with us." A rustling sound came from the Karathi section, their equivalent of skeptical laughter. "And I've discovered something interesting," Maya continued. "This war isn't really about territory, it's about pride." The chamber fell silent. Even the constant humming from the Vex containment suits seemed to quiet. "Each of your species has legitimate claims." The Karathi settled those systems first. The Vex developed the technology that made them habitable, and the Thurian have religious sites that predate both civilizations. "You're all right, and you're all wrong, and nobody wants to be the first to admit it. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you." "So here's what humanity proposes," Maya said, her voice growing stronger. "We create a joint administration. Each species contributes their expertise: Karathi planetary management, Vex technological innovation, Thurian spiritual guidance. Instead of fighting over who owns what, you work together to make it better." The silence stretched for long moments before Delegate Krex of the Karathi spoke, his voice like wind through ancient leaves. "Human, your proposal has merit, but it ignores fundamental incompatibilities. We cannot simply cooperate. Our cultures are too different, our needs too distinct." Maya nodded slowly. "That's what makes it work." The debate that followed Maya's proposal raged for hours. Representatives argued through their translation matrices, their words overlapping in a cacophony of diplomatic language. The Karathi insisted. Their agricultural methods were incompatible with Vex industrial processes. The Vex countered that Thurian spiritual restrictions would cripple scientific advancement. The Thurian maintained that both species showed insufficient respect for the sacred nature of the disputed worlds. Maya listened, taking notes on her tablet, but mostly observing. She watched how the Karathi delegates leaned forward when discussing soil composition, how the Vex became more animated when describing their atmospheric processors, how the Thurians' crystalline forms brightened when speaking of their ancestral sites. "You're all passionate about the same thing," she said during a brief lull in the arguments. Speaker Thalane's form pulsed with annoyance. "Human, we have just spent 3 hours explaining why we cannot reach accommodation. How can you claim we share common ground?" "Because you all love those worlds," Maya replied simply. "The Karathi see fertile soil and growing seasons. The Vex see potential for innovation and progress. The Thurians see sacred beauty worth preserving. You're not fighting over resources, you're fighting over gardens." Delegate Vaxis of the Vex floated closer to the speaking platform, her methane suit glowing with internal bioluminescence. "Your metaphor is interesting, human. But how does recognizing our motivations solve the practical problems of coexistence?" Maya smiled. "Have you ever tried to maintain a garden with friends?" The translation matrix struggled with the concept. The word friends came across as non-hostile entities of mutual benefit to the Thurian, symbiotic partners to the Vex, and clan-adjacent individuals to the Karathi. "I grew up on a farming colony," Maya continued. "My neighbor Tom was obsessed with tomatoes. He had 37 varieties and could talk for hours about soil pH. Mrs. Elena next door was all about flowers. She bred roses that could survive in low oxygen. And old Jake grew the most beautiful fruit trees, but he treated each one like it was sacred, practically praying over them." She gestured to encompass the chamber. Separately, they were just 3 people with gardens. But when the supply ships stopped coming during the rebellion on New Terra, they had to work together or starve. Tom's soil expertise helped Elena's flowers adapt to provide nutrition. Elena's breeding techniques helped Jake's trees produce more fruit. Jake's careful attention to plant health kept everyone's crops disease-free. The chamber was silent again. But this time it felt different. Contemplative rather than hostile. "They didn't stop being different," Maya said. Tom still muttered about tomato varieties. Elena still fussed over flower arrangements. And Jake still treated every plant like it was holy. But they learned that their differences made the whole colony stronger. Delegate Krex rustled his bark-like skin thoughtfully. "You suggest we maintain our distinct approaches while coordinating our efforts." "I suggest you do what you already do best, just in the same neighborhood," Maya replied. "The Karathi manage agricultural development, making sure the soil stays healthy and productive. The Vex handle technological infrastructure, creating the tools and systems everyone needs. The Thurian oversee environmental protection, ensuring that progress doesn't destroy what makes these worlds special." "And what role would humanity play in this? Asked Speaker Thelen. Maya's smile widened. "We'd be the annoying neighbors who throw barbecues and make sure everyone talks to each other." For the first time since she'd entered the chamber, Maya heard something that sounded almost like laughter from the Karathi section, a sound like wind chimes made of leaves. The formal negotiations began the next day. But the real work happened in the spaces between official sessions. Maya found herself shuttling between delegations, carrying questions and concerns, clarifying misunderstandings, and occasionally just listening to centuries of accumulated grievances. The Karathi delegation met in a section of the station they'd converted into a greenhouse, complete with soil samples and growing plants. Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by the scent of earth and growing things, while Delegate Krex explained the intricacies of their agricultural philosophy. "We do not simply plant crops," Krex said, his voice carrying the rhythm of seasonal cycles. "We partner with the world itself. Each soil type, each climate pattern, each native species, they all become part of the harmony we create. The Vex don't understand this, added Subdelegate Fern, her younger bark showing. More vibrant green. They see a world as raw material to be improved, not as a partner to be respected. Maya nodded thoughtfully. What if their improvements could help your partnerships work better? Like, what if their atmospheric processors could extend your growing seasons or help you work with native species that are currently too sensitive to cultivate? Later, in the sterile environment of the Vex quarters, Delegate Vaxes floated in her methane-filled chamber while explaining their perspective through the communication interface. The Karathi are inefficient, Vaxes declared, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with emphasis. They limit themselves to existing conditions instead of optimizing for maximum productivity. A world that could support 50 million beings is restricted to 5 million because they refuse to adapt the environment. But what if adapting the environment made their methods more effective instead of replacing them? Maya asked. What if your technology could help them partner with more species, work with more soil types, create more diverse ecosystems instead of more uniform ones? The Thurian proved the most challenging to approach. Their quarters were kept in complete darkness except for the light emanating from their crystalline bodies. Speaker Thelen met with Maya alone, his form casting rainbow patterns on the walls. You ask us to trust species who see our sacred sites as obstacles to productivity, Thelen said, his mental voice carrying overtones of ancient sadness. The Karathi would plant crops on burial grounds. The Vex would build factories over temples. Would they, though? Maya asked quietly. Or would they find ways to honor what you're protecting while still doing what they need to do? I mean, the Karathi understand sacred relationships with the land. The Vex are engineers. They can build around anything if they know it matters. You truly believe they would respect our requirements? Maya leaned forward, her voice gentle but certain. I think they've been so busy defending their own positions that none of you have really listened to what the others actually need. You're all assuming the worst about each other's intentions. That evening, Maya arranged what she called a cultural exchange dinner in one of the station's neutral meeting rooms. She'd somehow convinced the catering systems to produce foods that were safe for all three species, though safe didn't necessarily mean appealing. The Karathi brought samples of their soil and growing things, creating small displays that demonstrated their cultivation techniques. The Vex presented holographic models of their technological innovations, showing how their systems could be adapted for different environments. The Thurians shared recordings of their sacred sites, the first time they'd ever allowed outsiders to witness their religious practices. This is remarkable, Delegate Vaxes said, studying a Karathi soil sample through her suit's sensors. Your microbial cultivation produces nitrogen fixation rates 20% higher than our chemical alternatives. Your atmospheric processors, Krex replied, examining a Vex hologram, could allow us to extend growing seasons on worlds with shorter solar cycles. We had not considered this possibility. Speaker Thelen's crystalline form pulsed with what Maya had learned was curiosity. The harmonic frequencies in your industrial processes, they are not dissimilar to our ritual chants. There may be ... complementary resonances. Maya watched the three delegations slowly begin to talk with each other instead of at each other. For the first time, she felt genuinely hopeful about the negotiations. Then, everything went wrong. The attack came at 0300 station time. Maya was awakened by emergency klaxons and the mechanical voice of the stations, AI announcing a hull breach in Section 7, exactly where the Thurian delegation was quartered. She ran through corridors filled with emergency lighting and the acrid smell of atmospheric recyclers working overtime. Station security, a mix of species from the neutral worlds, were already cordoning off the damaged area. Through the transparent aluminum barriers, Maya could see twisted metal and the glittering fragments of crystalline debris. How many? She asked Commander Blake, the human security chief who'd arrived on the same ship as Maya. 3 Thurian dead, 2 more severely injured, Blake replied grimly. It was a shaped charge, placed with surgical precision. This wasn't. Random someone knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum damage to crystalline physiology. Maya felt her stomach clench. Political assassination? That's what it looks like. And there's more. We found evidence suggesting the explosive was made using Vex industrial compounds, planted using Karathi bioadhesives. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. Someone had deliberately used materials from both species to frame them for the attack. Where are the other delegations? Secured in their quarters under protective custody. But Captain Blake's expression was grim. Speaker Thelen is demanding immediate evacuation of all Thurian personnel. He's calling for a formal declaration of vendetta against both the Karathi and the Vex. Maya ran toward the Thurian quarters, her mind racing. 3 days of careful progress, 3 days of building trust and understanding, destroyed in a single night. But something about the attack felt wrong, too convenient, too perfectly designed to restart the conflict. She found Speaker Thelen in the station's medical bay, his crystalline form dimmed with grief and rage. The injured Thurian delegates lay on specialized treatment beds, their normally bright forms flickering weakly. They dare to speak of cooperation while murdering us in our sleep. Thelen's mental voice crashed through Maya's consciousness like a thunderstorm. Your garden metaphor was naive, human. Some species are predators, not partners. Speaker Thelen, please, silence. The force of his mental shout made Maya stagger. I have sent word to the Thurian fleet. We withdraw from these meaningless talks. Let the Karathi and Vex fight over the disputed worlds. We will cleanse them all with crystal fire when their war ends. Maya watched helplessly as the Thurian delegation prepared for immediate departure. Within hours, their ships had left the station, carrying with them any hope of peaceful resolution. But Maya couldn't let it end like this. Something about the attack nagged at her, the perfect timing, the convenient evidence, the surgical precision that seemed designed to cause maximum political damage rather than maximum casualties. She spent the next 18 hours reviewing security footage, analyzing the explosive residue, and interviewing station personnel. What she found confirmed her suspicions. The attack had been too perfect, too precisely calculated to restart the conflict. The breakthrough came when she was reviewing the station's environmental systems logs. Someone had accessed the atmospheric controls for Section 7 just 30 minutes before the explosion, not to plant the bomb, but to adjust the air mixture in a way that would minimize damage to the station's structure while maximizing harm to crystalline physiology. Commander Blake, Maya called over her communicator. I need you to pull the access logs for environmental systems. Cross-reference them with all station personnel who have clearance for both Vex industrial compounds and Karathi biological materials. The results were conclusive. Station Chief Engineer Valdez, a human from the colony world of New Barcelona, had accessed all the necessary systems and materials. When security reached his quarters, they found him packing a one-way ticket to the outer rim already purchased. Under interrogation, Valdez broke quickly. He'd been recruited by a consortium of arms dealers and military contractors who'd been profiting from the 18-month war. The peace negotiations threatened to end their lucrative business, so they'd paid him to ensure the talks failed. It was supposed to be simple, Valdez confessed, his voice shaking. Just make it look like the Karathi and Vex were responsible. Restart the fighting, everyone goes back to buying weapons and hiring mercenaries. Maya felt a cold rage building in her chest. 3 beings had died, 2 more were fighting for their lives, and an entire star system was about to burn. Also, a handful of profiteers could maintain their income stream, but knowing the truth and convincing the Thurian fleet to believe it were 2 very different problems, Maya stood alone in the station's primary communications array, staring at the holographic display showing the positions of warships throughout the disputed systems. The Thurian Crystal Fleet had taken position at the edge of the contested zone, their ships glowing like angry stars. The Karathi agricultural vessels were fleeing toward neutral space, while Vex industrial platforms were converting themselves into makeshift fortresses. The war was about to resume, and this time it would be total. "Open a channel to Speaker Thelen," Maya instructed the communications officer. "Captain Stone, the Thurian fleet is maintaining communications silence," came the reply. "They're not accepting any transmissions from the station." Maya closed her eyes, thinking furiously. Standard diplomatic protocols were useless now. The evidence of Valdez's sabotage was clear, but the Thurian wouldn't listen to explanations from the species they blamed for the attack. "What about direct neural interface?" she asked. "The Thurian can communicate mind-to-mind across interstellar distances, right?" The communications officer, a young Centauran named Ellis, looked puzzled. "Theoretically, yes, but humans don't have the necessary neural structures. Thurian telepathy requires crystalline resonance chambers in the brain." Maya smiled grimly. "But we do have something they don't expect. Open a wide-band transmission to all ships in the system, all species, all frequencies." "Captain, that's going to reach everyone: military, civilian, commercial traffic, even the news networks." "Good. That's exactly what I want." The channel opened with a burst of static, then cleared to show Maya's face to every ship, station, and settlement within 3 light years. "My name is Captain Maya Stone of the Earth vessel Harmony," she began. "3 days ago, I told a joke to the Galactic Council. I said humans would be the annoying neighbors who throw barbecues and make sure everyone talks to each other." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Well, here's the thing about annoying neighbors: we don't give up easily." Maya pulled up the evidence files, displaying them for all to see. 18 hours ago, 3 Thurian delegates were murdered by Station Chief Engineer Valdez, a human working for arms dealers who wanted to restart this war. Not by the Karathi, not by the Vex, by profiteers who've been getting rich off your blood. The communication channels erupted with chatter from across the system as ships and stations began examining the evidence. "Speaker Thelen," Maya continued, "I know you're listening, even if you won't admit it. Your people died because someone wanted to turn your grief into profit. Don't let them win. Don't let 3 good beings die for nothing more than money." She took a deep breath, then did something no human had ever done in interstellar diplomacy. She laughed. It wasn't a diplomatic chuckle or a polite expression of amusement. It was a genuine, deeply human laugh, the sound of someone who'd seen the absurdity of the universe and decided to find it funny instead of tragic. "You want to know what's hilarious?" Maya said, still chuckling. "A human joke really is going to end this war. Just not the way I planned." The laughter was infectious in a way that transcended species barriers. Human crew members throughout the system began chuckling, then the Centaurans picked it up, followed by the more emotionally expressive species. It spread like a wave across the communication networks, not because the situation was funny, but because Maya's laughter carried something deeper. It carried hope. "Here's the real punchline," Maya said as her laughter faded to a warm smile. "We're all out here in the dark between the stars, trying to build something better than what we left behind. And we're going to let a handful of war profiteers convince us to burn it all down." She shook her head. "That's not just tragic, it's stupid. And if there's one thing humans hate more than tragedy, it's stupidity." The first response came from an unexpected source: Captain Zorn of the Karathi agricultural vessel Growing Season. "Human Maya," his translated voice carried the rustling of leaves in a spring breeze. "Your evidence is compelling. If Speaker Thelen will return to negotiations, The Karathi will honor our commitment to joint administration. Then Delegate Vaxus's voice crackled through from a Vex industrial platform. The Vex Collective agrees. Our conflict is with profiteers, not with our potential partners. For long minutes, nothing came from the Thurian fleet. Then, finally, Speaker Thilane's mental voice touched every consciousness in the system simultaneously. The first time a Thurian had ever attempted such a broad telepathic transmission. The human's joke was not funny, Thelen said, his thoughts carrying overtones of grief and grudging respect. But her point resonates. We will return to the station. We will honor our dead by building the peace they died trying to achieve. Maya sank into the communications chair, exhaustion hitting her like a wave. Around her, the communications board lit up with messages from across the system ships changing course. Fleets standing down, colonies beginning to emerge from hiding. 6 months later, Maya stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, the new joint administrative center orbiting the primary disputed world. Through the viewport, she could see Karathi agricultural domes growing alongside Vex industrial complexes, all built around carefully preserved Thurian sacred sites that now served as parks and meditation centers for all three species. You know, said Commander Blake, joining her at the viewport. I still don't get the joke. Maya smiled, watching a mixed crew of Karathi, Vex, and Thurian engineers working together to install a new atmospheric processor. That's the thing about humor, Blake. Sometimes the best jokes are the ones nobody laughs at, because they make you think instead. The war was over. The profiteers were in prison. And three very different species were learning to be neighbors. That it wasn't perfect. And it wasn't easy, but it was working. And sometimes Maya thought that was the best punchline of all.